This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, I'd like to call to order the April 10th, 2024 meeting of the Easthampton Historical Commission. The first order of business is public speak. No one?
Anyone here for public speak? Great.
Okay, approval of the March 13th meeting. Got minutes? Give me a copy. Look at these. You have a copy of them?
I read it online. The March one?
Yeah. Really wasn't much of a meeting except for public speak.
I can make a motion to approve the minutes from the March meeting.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approved as written. Okay, correspondence. Do we have anything?
Just what's on the agenda.
I did get a packet of materials from something on Rockville Road, off of Rockville Road. You familiar with that project? Behind Ashley Circle, kind of.
This is like the residential development.
Yeah.
Vaguely.
Yeah, I forgot to throw it in my bag, so I'll have to.
They were just looking. They CC'd the historical commission in a filing to the state for.
I'm not sure exactly. It was just a little.
There's nothing on that. There's nothing built on that site.
No, they're just proposing some lots and whatnot.
Okay.
Guess we'll talk about it next month.
Yeah.
If we need to.
I mean, typically this historical commission's just weighing in on
Right.
the built environment. So.
Well, the only thing would be artifacts, I suppose, if the problem being where it is.
Right.
It's in the lead mine area and possibly Native American.
Right.
That's all. All right. Next order of business, Brian Malicki.
That's me.
Step right up. What do you got for us?
So, Brian Malicki with Sage Engineering, representing the owner of JC Top, 9397 Northampton Street. Many moons ago, we were in front of you for some removal of buildings on the property, and as part of the planning board process, this commission submitted I'll call it a comment letter regarding the canal that abutted the rear portion of the property. So the planning board made as a condition of their approval of the project that we get the commission's input on some historical signage to recognize the canal remnants that are there. There is a small section that's still relatively intact. It is well outside of the work area, so it will remain intact. It's not even an area where it could be accidentally impacted. It's 40 feet down a hill outside the limit of work. So I submitted a kind of a concept of what I came up with for historical signage to put at the top of that slope that goes down to the canal. And it was just looking for input. I mean, we're required to get your approval essentially of that signage and install it before we can start work. So
Okay, well, you're in luck today. We have Carl Walter, who knows a lot about the canal.
I have a small bit of information to pass along. There is an institution in Pennsylvania that specializes in making canal signage, and it's free. But you do have to apply, and it takes them a while to get things done. I don't know the name of it, but I know the person to contact who's actually done this in Southwick and in Westfield. His name is Bob Madison, and he's in Feeding Hills. And I've got his phone number in my pocket here someplace. Madison here. 413-786-5395. And I give you an email too. I don't think you'll mind. It's bob.mary@comcast.net. As I say, he has done this. He knows the ins and outs of it. It's a formal procedure because they want to know where it's going and what it's going to say and so on and so forth. But it is good roadside signage. There's one on Route 57 going from Southwick to Feeding Hills. And there's another one at the south end of the canal on the Congamon Ponds at the state line, if you want to go look at what they look like. But they're standard, really sturdy signage.
Okay.
There are other kinds of signage we have down in Connecticut, which are sort of done on the national park style, which is a raised bench which you can sit and look and see the map and see what there. But that's probably more than you want to do, and it's expensive. But this other one is free, and it might be what you're looking for.
Something the way I would probably respond to that is let us try to do both. I mean, to satisfy the condition of the board, I'd like to just keep the control and put a sign up on our dime so that I can control the schedule a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then I would have no problem reaching out to that contact to do an additional signage.
Sure. Okay.
And theirs will be a bonus. I kind of picked a sign off of a sign making website that reminded me of the one I see by Lyman Sheet Metal for the Southampton Canal.
Yep.
It's kind of just, I just got it up there. And I just summarized some of what, as an engineering nerd, because I'm an engineer, I thought were some of the highlights of the canal system, the number of locks, the height, the distance, and then just kind of it became obsolete because of the advent of the railroad system. Right. And they turned it into a railroad and then that disappeared. And so, I mean, you can only fit so much on a sign that people are going to read, and I'm certainly open to suggestions, but I think more the merrier. I mean, the proper.
About that. What are you going to make it out of?
The sign?
Sign.
It would just be the same one that I've seen up, I think even Westfield has one. It's an aluminum sign.
Not wood though. Or
No,
anything.
no maintenance.
Except for vandals, but
We can't make it proof everything. I figured that over the years. Stupid is, stupid does. But it would be a really nice vantage point. It's at the top of the hill. It looks down to the canal and the Manhand beyond it.
looks good.
Chance to take a look at that.
Are you looking to get the approval tonight, or are you information, have the committee discuss it, and then?
I don't have any hard and fast answer to the question. I mean, I'd like to make some progress because it does preclude the start of construction. Whether that was intentional or not, that's the way the condition was written from the planning end of it. But I have no objection to getting some feedback at the next meeting or getting some comments by the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't know what your schedule, if you're trying to break
Yeah, no,
ground
I mean, it's
tomorrow
gonna
or
be
something
late
like that.
summer when we're really need to start construction, so we have some time. I'm trying to get ahead of these conditions and not be scrambling and begging for approvals when
That's great.
Yeah, it's very helpful.
so I'm certainly open to suggestions, and I will reach out to that contact as well, but I'd like to make it in addition to what we're willing to do.
Is this cast aluminum or painted on aluminum?
It's a vinyl decal on aluminum.
For what?
It's printed essentially on the aluminum.
Laser printed or?
Screen printed. I didn't get into
Painted,
the.
though, painted more than, it's not.
Yes.
It's not actually cast aluminum.
No, it's not like a typical.
Like a laser.
It's not this bronze historical marker sign that the state puts out at our budget.
Yeah.
Is it called the Hampshire Hamden Canal in that section?
Would you two like to,
Yeah, I would.
pass it over, please?
While we have two eminent scholars, it makes sense to like,
I saw your name on the agenda, I said, oh, I should get some good feedback.
might as well get like,
So I can speak, it's open.
Hey, you can-
Okay, so when this project started, because I just recently reviewed it for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, this commission has been working on documenting the Easthampton section of the Hampshire
Yeah.
Atlantic Canal for a long time. And the Massachusetts Historical Commission has had, and Carl was really heavily involved in that, Mass Historic has had the inventory form for several months, but it's not in the Macris maps yet, so it doesn't show up for anybody doing a project notification form. But thankfully with this, I was able to push a little bit, and now the inventory forms are finally in Macris. They don't show up on the map,
okay.
but they're in Macris itself, so you're welcome to take that.
Thank you.
They did area forms for every community, Southampton up to Northampton. So this is the Easthampton form, and just kind of gives an overview of the canal in Easthampton and the mapping and everything like that. But
I don't.
the archaeological firm that worked on it
Take that one.
did some of the walking and mapping with Carl and some of the research from him as well. So that's yours.
Thank
just
you.
For your fun knowledge.
Just trying to see what segment is actually on the subject.
The parcel, and that's what, when I was looking at, when I was
It looks
reviewing
like-
this for PVPC, I was like, that's one of the parcels. It's at the back of it, but, yeah, a lot of the canal has been lost to development, just because it didn't show up on any planning type maps that were looked at, Macris or anything like that. So that was one of the goals of this project, just to get it out there so that people knew what was there when they're, not to stop development, but just to, mitigate
Yeah,
doing any more damage if possible.
so this section, there's two parts of it on the property. One is marked as destroyed, and then the northernmost portion of it is marked as preserved, and it is mostly still there. There's some
Yeah.
old collapses of it, but
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That's what, from the eastern part of the state, they said that there's nothing left, but Carl knew that wasn't true. Communities knew that wasn't true. And then the archaeologists, when they walked the entire length this past summer, there were definitely sections that are gone, but there's
yeah, it
still
looks like
parts
man
that-
and nature
Yeah.
took out some sections of it.
Yeah.
But there's-
What part are you talking about, putting this sign on?
The part that remains that is,
No, but can you describe it where it is? Or do you have a map you can show me?
Yeah, the map is actually, if you turn it over.
so I have a site plan that shows where it is, and I was proposing to put it kind of at the outer limits of development.
I'm just trying to figure out where this is.
Yeah, let me find it on your map there.
And I think the actual parcels aren't identified because it's so unique, because archaeological documentation is not usually in Macris, but the state is kind of working with us in a way by showing where it is, but not identifying, because you have to have a permit to
Is it
see where
north of the center
archaeological
of
things
town or
are.
south of the center of town?
It's close to O'Neill Street.
Close to what?
It's off of, it's on, behind Burger King,
Are you familiar with
McDonald's
where the Claps Tavern used to be?
Pollard's.
The Claps Tavern?
All right.
It's behind McDonald's.
North of that,
Well, it's right next to 10 then.
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
By the bridge, right?
Claps Tavern is the
Yeah.
old freight house.
Right.
in
Yeah.
Northampton. So now I know where I am anyway, okay.
Here,
There's
you
not
can
an
have this
awful
one
lot to
too.
be too concerned about there, no.
Right, well, we're just trying to do
Right.
no further harm if possible.
I mean, I would imagine, I haven't seen it, but I would imagine most people would probably walk by it and not really know what it was anyway. So having a sign there at least brings some
You can-
attention
that's
to
the copy of
it.
the East
Unless you're
Hampton.
standing down in the canal looking, it doesn't stand out very much.
Yeah.
But if you're standing in it and looking at it, it looks like a canal. For any other
If you
vantage
didn't know
point.
what it was, you wouldn't know now. But if you did know, you probably would.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of the same thing as you go along, like heading towards Northampton, the bike path is here, and the little canal beds here, and it's kind of like, you really don't know, it's a gully. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as obvious as some of the more man-made locks and the stone
Right,
walls
yeah.
that are a little blunt, some of them.
You don't see too many of those.
Yeah. why I referenced the one in Southampton. I drive by it twice a day every day. Never knew it was there until they put up a sign.
So those signs are so good.
The only comment I have about the words on the sign is that you say 28 locks between New Haven and Granby, which is true. But you're in Massachusetts, and there are another 32 locks in Massachusetts that don't even get mentioned. Doing that might be tricky, and you're running into problems with space, I see, but it might be better just to say that there were 60 locks between New Haven and Northampton, and that would sort of get the whole thing in together. I mean, that's a lot of locks. Did 5 minutes of locks going between New Haven and Northampton. It took them 4 hours just to go up and down without going forward at all.
So what did you say, there was 60?
60.
60 locks between where?
Between New Haven and the river in Northampton.
And I guess I always thought it was while the railroads were a contributing factor to it, it's oversimplification for why it failed. Because I think there was also like a lot of mismanagement and vandalism and other things that contributed to its demise, but you also don't have room in your for that.
I was
So-
trying to keep it to the point where it gains people's interest enough to
Yeah.
look into the whole story.
So I do think that
Bottom line
that's
is
important.
faster
And
transportation.
that's what I've learned. I'm a big sign reader when I'm out hiking in the woods, but my interest falls off pretty quick.
Yeah,
But if something piques my interest, I'll pull it up on my phone, I'll read it when I get home.
yeah.
People are in a hurry doing things.
Yeah, so it's enough to kind of
Over-
tickle the interest, whether, if they like it, they'll look into it more, if they don't,
Yep.
they're not for us.
Does this go back this way?
Thank you. Okay. So at this point, you're just looking for some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I ultimately would like your guys' approval on the sign and the location so that we can get it installed and check that condition off the box.
Okay.
So if maybe I'll follow up with Jamie as we get closer to the next meeting.
How big is this sign proposed to be?
Roughly 1.5 feet.
By
Yeah, ish. It had a little bit of a curb appeal to it. It was-
So roughly a foot and a half by a foot
roughly
and a
square,
half.
but it's got some flair to it,
Okay.
1.5 feet, 18 inches.
18 by 18.
It's not a roadside sign, then it's a hiking by sign, or it'll be near where people can see it.
Yeah, the goal was to kind of put it essentially in the backyard of the nearest building, so that
The
it's...
sign of the road is way too small.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a walk-by sign.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody is gonna be able to easily walk from the development area down to the canal. It's very steep. But when the leaves are down, you'll be able to see it from the sign. You just look down the slope to it.
Okay.
And it'll be mounted on a pole or
Yeah,
some-
just a steel pole of some sort, so it stands out and
so about
stands
4 or
up.
5 feet high, so you can
Yep.
read it. Okay.
Like I said, kind of put it right at the back of the limit of clearing so that it's not just alone in the woods, but it'll be close enough to the top of the bank where somebody could say, oh, let's go look at it.
Is this part of a walking path or a biking path or anything?
No.
It's just there for...
It's just the back, it's the back of the development.
More than enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for, I'll either have Jamie get in touch with you or I'll get in touch with you and we can, go over some ideas and whatnot.
Sounds good. I'll make a
Take a
note.
look at where it's gonna be.
Yeah, I sketched out a plan of the site in that packet I submitted, and I'll make notes of the suggestions to the number, the verbiage change.
That's about the same number of words that ought to fit in the same
Yeah,
space.
no problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, Shannon. Come on down, you can come join us.
I see that for a second.
260.
Carl, would you also want to join us at the table?
Since we don't have an angry mob.
I saw you when you came in, I was like,
They finally found the second dam.
yeah.
Oh, you did?
Absolutely.
I think that when I was here physically last time, my hair was down to here. I've had a lot happen since then.
Yeah, and I've seen you only on Zoom.
On Zoom, that's
And
right.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, time has passed by quickly. Well, these, if you want a copy for the files, it's finally in Macris.
Okay.
And part of it was because I said, we're reviewing a project that has one of the properties, and you've had it for weeks, and it's not in Macris. So they put the area forms in Macris for all 6 communities.
Is
We
this
don't
just
have the-
Easthampton, or is this all 6?
That one's just Easthampton. So each community has one about that size.
Great.
And you can't search it. I like using Macris maps because you can look visually, but it doesn't show up there yet. I guess there's a cycle with when they do that. But if you go in Easthampton and you look at area forms, it's towards the end of the area forms on just the straight up database. So I'm interested to see how it shows up in Macris, because in theory, it's going to be just a long line that goes all the way from Northampton down to Southwick. So, which is what they said they were going to do. They were going to provide, outlines. So that would be great.
Very, very good.
We don't have the National Register eligibility determination yet, so I'm going to follow up after this meeting. And they had said that it was with the Archaeological Department. I'm waiting for that. But now that they're in the database, I'm hoping that you'll get a response soon.
Do you want me to put this in the file? I have a bunch of stuff that needs to get added to our files.
Yeah.
So I can keep that with it, and then one day we'll get finally.
Another copy?
Yeah. There you go.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So we're still waiting on that.
Yep, waiting on the eligibility determination. And then the next step is for the communities to discuss next steps, funding and things like that.
Do you have any thoughts on that you want to share with us tonight, or is that just better to have it later when we have that?
I do currently have some of those hours that let me help facilitate and work on the RFP and the procurement and everything, and kind of be the go-between. So I do have more hours through December of 2024. So, and I've explained to the state that some of the communities have CPA money that they use for this, and there's funding cycles, and that some of that is maybe passed already for some communities, depends on how it works in town meetings and things like that. So that's what I'm going to go back to again and just say, there's momentum here that we don't want to miss out on. And it was verbally indicated that it looked favorable for a determination of positive eligibility. So, yeah. But my thoughts otherwise, PVPC is available to help with if the communities decide to go together again, put it out to bid, and just kind of be the go-to person for a consultant who's doing the work.
Do we think we have enough money left from the previous appropriations to?
I don't think so, because I think when they asked to do all those additional forms, I think the communities, well, actually it depends, because some communities asked for more money and some communities asked for exactly that amount.
Right.
But I think that all of those contracts are expired. So
Well, I don't feel like
it depends on.
Easthampton still, unless we close the purchase order, or close
Yeah,
the
so
account,
it
we
probably
might still have,
differs by community.
a few
Yeah,
hundred.
and Southwick was using a mitigation fund that had nothing to do with CPA, so they, I know that they have funds left in that.
Is the National Register process as onerous or more onerous than the state one?
I'm gonna say, usually it's more onerous, but I'm gonna say in this case, I think it's less, because this was there were so many hoops to jump through just to even get these area forms, and the mapping that had to go before, like that part of it's already done.
Right.
The mapping, but the owner's part will be the public outreach to all the private property owners.
How many of those did you get, percentage-wise? Did you get half the people that say it was all right, or?
No, well, so what happened was, we had all the properties identified, and then Northampton put together a mailing list, and they actually did all the postcards for us. Sent them to all the property owners, and then they put my name on it. So I was receiving the phone calls, and I heard from a few people who said, even my email was on there too, who said no, but I heard from a lot of people who actually reached out to me to say how excited they were. So I thought that was interesting. Like, they took the time to call and say, yes, the canal is in my yard. And then somebody called, and it was somebody and his parents. They lived near each other in Northampton, and they both like were so excited because they said, it used to be here, it's not anymore, but it was, and we can tell you where it was. And I guess the street was rerouted, but there were not a lot of people who said no. I was surprised, but there were people who went out of their way to say, yeah, this is cool.
That's good.
Yeah, we want to be a part of it. Let me know when they're coming, because I want to be out back and I want to show them where it is. Because I know where it is better than they do.
So you think 4/5 of the people said yes?
A lot of people didn't respond.
Ah, okay, there's the.
Yeah, so it was
I was out
kind
with the
of,
archaeologists around the Congamon Pond.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
really we could do very little of that because they didn't have permission to go. And we ended up walking long distances where we just couldn't go near it. They couldn't go near it.
well,
I did it
so
30 years ago
they
and I
didn't
didn't
go,
ask, so
they
I
didn't
know.
go on the property if people didn't respond?
If they didn't give permission, they didn't go on.
Oh, okay. I
And
thought they,
I thought that's what
I
it
think
was
in
gonna be
some.
for the whole thing.
Well, and I think it was said that we would like to go on the property, and if you don't want us to, let us know. This is your opportunity. If you don't have an issue with it, you don't have to sit with it. So it probably was like a
Well,
case by
I'm sure you had that
case.
problem on the feeder.
I think
In Westfield.
there was some problem with
Yeah.
they're signed no trespassing.
Oh, yeah, so there might be some
There were some
where,
like railroad lines where I thought they were like, or areas where like they were
like the
watershed.
Westfield into Russell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
but
remember-
they said that the archaeologists told me they were able to access a lot of it
Yeah.
and spent some time with you, and I think it was over 2 weeks, I believe, maybe last May
They
or.
had my computer for 3 months, so they. They
You
checked
gave
it.
them your computer?
They had it for 3 months so that they could know where to go.
That's amazing.
Because
So,
sometimes it's hard.
Carl was such an important part of this project,
Thank
and
you.
I know you've been working on it for
Well,
decades.
maybe we lead into why I'm here anyway.
Perfect segue.
I've been studying the canal for 30 years. I walked the whole thing and photographed the whole thing. And I've been collecting pictures and documents that go back, well, 1818 and until very recently. The pictures go back to the 1880s. I've been putting together a large database of the canal, which has encompassed everything that all the canal towns have, from New England to Northampton, and then accessing things like Yale and UConn and other libraries, even into Harvard Business School Library, and things like that, where all these documents have gone. But I've been working on it for 30 years. It has about 2,000 pictures and 2,000 documents approximately. Since I'm not getting any younger, and I don't want it to perish when I do, for what that's worth, I have offered it to all the canal towns, the 14 canal towns. Unfortunately, it runs on a computer, and so the only way to get around that is I'm donating a computer to each town to run the program. I'm not making the program as a gift. The program still remains with me. I'm making the program accessible to all the different towns to use. And part of that is because as long as I'm around, I keep updating it, adding material. Stuff is always turning up. And so it will, every 6 months I have to go out and update it and get rid of the bugs and put in the new information and all of that. The reason I'm here is that there is really nobody to contact in Easthampton as far as the Historical Society goes. I don't know who to contact.
Yep.
So I thought I would throw it in your laps for suggestions. Some of the towns, the smaller towns especially, that have very short hours, weekly or monthly even, have said that they'd accept it, but they put it in the town library so it's more accessible for students because they have longer hours. And so that's something that might work here rather than put it in, well, I don't even know where the Historical Society is or who it is or anything about it. I can't get in touch with it. So I brought them a set of canal maps 15 years ago when I had the Massachusetts map. I couldn't contact them. I left 100 copies at the library. Whatever happened to those, I don't know. Maybe they're still in the library, but they were supposed to be at the Historical Society so they could sell it for $10 a map and make some money. So I don't know what happened to those maps in Northampton. Everybody else had been through them. We're in a second printing, and the big repository now is in Northampton. They took most of the second printing, but everybody else has them. So I'm just putting it out for your information. I don't know what to do. If I find out I'll buy a computer, I'll put the program on it, and I'll deliver it and show you how to run it. But
Yeah, so.
9 towns have taken advantage of it so far, and I have another 2 that I haven't fulfilled yet, and then there'll be another 5 that are just hard to get hold of. This is one of them.
We have similar problems getting hold of this in our society. We have another project that we're trying to get a custodian agreement for archaeological artifacts that are turned up during a dig, and we can't get their approval for a custodial agreement, which is delaying this project. So, not that that helps you.
Although, Carl, we're like so humbly grateful for your work.
Yeah.
So much so.
Well, it's available. I don't know whether or not it will survive long after I do. The problem with the program is that I started this in the early 1990s, and it's on a program which was brand new in the early 1990s. Computers have obviously progressed since then. This is a 32-bit program. All the programs now are 64-bit, and even worse problems than that. But the thing is that after you get to 2016 or 17, there's no program or no computer made that will run this program anymore. So it's basically an artifact itself. And when these old computers wear out, it'll be junk. Hopefully nobody will be able to keep the old computers intact. But this is why I am shotgunning them out to everybody on the hope that maybe someplace, be it New Haven or Northampton or someplace in between, will have one that survives, or at least be able to afford to repair it, or whatever, I don't know. But the program basically is almost theft-proof, because if you go and put the thing in, take a thumb drive, program in your hand, but you can't play it on any modern computer. It will not play on any PC, and certainly any of the newer Macs with M1 and M2 chips, forget it. It's just totally incompatible with Intel chips, which is what this is running on. You can run the 64-bit Intel chips with emulation on the newer Macs, but not the brand new Macs. So what I do, and the reason I can afford to do this, is I'm going back and I'm buying Macs from 2012, 2014. They're $200 a piece, so it's worth doing. And they're in good repair, and they run fine, and if they're not going to get used too much, they'll probably last a long time. And hopefully by then somebody will find that there's a business to be had in repairing these old things or preserving old software or something like that. Apple should do it, but they're too busy doing crazy things they shouldn't be doing.
What is the software?
What is the software? The software is called SuperCard. There was a way back early in the Mac era, one called HyperCard, and this is an improvement on that. It's a very versatile program. You can do absolutely anything with it without knowing how to program. You can tell it to do things. It does everything, but it's just obsolete, and there's no way to update it because Apple has changed the innards of the computer. So it used to be back then, when you were programming a computer, you did every little thing. And Apple's gone to the point where they're making big chunks of boilerplate, and they all fit together. There's no way to get down to the detail to do the things you can do with this program anymore. So that's the way it is. If you'd like to see a little example, I brought it with me. If you don't care, it's okay too.
I'd love to play around with that. I'd love to see it.
At least you'll know what you're...
Is there any way to export it, or once it's in there, it's...
That's a good question.
It's really cool.
Yeah. No.
What you'd be getting is something just like this. Not that's new. Mine is newer, but it's like this. A laptop, 15-inch laptop. How am I going to do this? Because I'm upside down.
Over here.
Upside down.
Or maybe we could stand behind you?
Oh, you dummy. Tape is too new. I forgot to bring the adapter to the plug type mouse. I can't use the mouse. The ones you're getting will take this. Oh well. Let's see. Here it is up here. So this is going to be awkward with them. That's an actual canal horn. It's in Plainville, Connecticut. It just has a, this is basically a reference book on the canal, encyclopedia, dictionary, whatever. There's no way you can go in here and look at the whole thing. You have to know a subject that you're interested in, and then you can focus in and look at it. If you want to look at that. I can't see what I'm doing too well here. The horn that you just heard. There's the horn. And we don't have to listen to the whole thing. All right, now what you basically, you can do is navigate along the canal with these arrows. This is an old 1890 map which was had the canal put on it in the 1930s by Mr. Hart, and so I got his map and put it here. And if you want to go from town to town without going like that, you can just go up here and look for the right town, and you want to go to Easthampton, and bang, you're in Easthampton. And if you get to a place and you want to find out what there is to look at, you come down here, show sites, and there's a bunch of dots, and you just go onto the dot. This is a nice place here, lot 26. This is a prototype of the map that we published. I actually had to create this map by going back to the surveyor's directions and getting their directions to make this map, because there was an original engineering map, but it was lost in a fire. So there is no map except that the one I made. Here you get a number of pictures, and you're on number 1 of 10 here. And this is basically, if you go over here and you just don't click, but just run it on here, you get my explanation of what's going on. And you go down here and there's the credit. And these are the locks. This is lock 26, 25 and 26 in Easthampton. This is an old 1930s picture from Mr. Hart, 1933. And again, the same thing from him. And this is what it looks like today. And this is looking down, oh God, what was it? Pomeroy Meadow Road, I think it is. The Manhattan River between Southampton and Easthampton is just behind here. The guy's standing on the bridge looking. Those locks were over in here. On lock 27 was right here and dropped down, and then there's an aqueduct over the Manhattan River into Easthampton right over here where I'm sitting. But we get out of that.
This is a labor of love.
And there are other things that, for instance, if I can get to where I back down to any particular town. Here we have New Haven, and there is a section called History. Now, this is the history documents of the Farmington Canal and of the New Haven and Northampton Canal, which is a successor. And then there are in New Haven itself a number of things that you can look at. And if you come over here to items, and I can work myself out of here. This is tricky without a mouse. I get over here. There's one called A Shocking Accident, just for example. This is from a New Haven newspaper, 1843. It talks about a canal boat from Plainville called the Ceres, which was down from Plainville to New Haven picking up stuff. It was in the were being managed by two kids, one of whom was 16 and the other was his brother, I think. And they were coming along to a bridge, and the younger kid decided he'd jump on top of the canal boat and go under the bridge. Somebody who knew better said, don't do it, but it was too late. He got on the top of the boat, and the boat slopes up, and he lay down, and as the bridge came, less and less and less space, and he was pushed to the point where there was no space between the bridge and the canal boat. And he gave one shriek, and that was the end of him. No, it's not going to do that. I got to get down here. So that's one article. Here's the next article. And here's the next article, which describes what the doctor found and the whole thing, and how he gave one shriek and he couldn't breathe. I think he suffocated. He was just pressed like a sandwich. And you can see that by going up here. And there's the boat. This is the Grand Avenue Bridge. I don't think it's the same bridge, but you can see the slope of the boat. So if the guy lay down here and he was pushed along it until there was no space between there and here, and the boat actually came to rest, and there was no way to move the boat. He was just jammed in there, and they finally had to go down to the lock below and lower the lock, or lower the water in that level, so that the boat would go away from the bridge. By that time, he was dead. And if we go down here, I dug on it. Oh, I wish I had my mouse. I don't know if I can do this again. Well, I can do it this way if I get over here and know what I'm doing. New Haven items. They're just going to show you the end of it, down to the shocking accident again. All right, now. Where's the cursor? There you are. Anyway, that was the boat had stopped, and then he was taken home, and there's his tombstone, and gives his name and who he was the son of, and was killed on the canal on September 28, 1843, age 16 years. So that's that story. There are lots and lots and lots of stories. They go on like this for every particular town, or every piece of the map has its own section of documents. And then there's a section here on engineering, where you can go down and you can find out anything you want to know about all the different engineering features of the canal. And there's a section here on operations, which tells you the names of all the canal boats I could find, cargo manifests, inspector certificates, passenger way bills, lock tending, the actual rules of regulations of running the canal are in here too, how to make tolls, lock keeping, the whole thing. If you go down to cargo manifests, for instance, if I can get there. This is a cargo manifest, and if you go down like this, I got it all translated for you so you can see. This is a Westfield boat. Is it? See, no, this is the Enterprise. This is not the Westfield.
8 barrels of oysters,
Right,
1 barrel of
fine.
sugar, 3 barrels of flour, 1 of brandy. That's phenomenal.
And then we go
That's a lot of oysters.
It is.
And here's another more complicated one here, which, this is a General Sheldon from Westfield. But this is a very important thing.
That's phenomenal, Carl. It's
one of the
really,
most-
it's overwhelmingly impressive
Yeah,
and
whoever
incredible.
does the National Register nomination,
This is,
it's,
yeah.
there's so much more information than you would ever.
If we
be
go,
able to
where's these
access.
two?
I think the Smithsonian would be a good place for this.
Yeah, it's a digital exhibit.
It's really,
Well, I was actually wondering about that. Is there any professional organizations that would be willing? I mean, it seems like this type of thing that would be good for translation to like a web.
That's
a
a, I
website.
wonder, have you ever reached out to Mass Archives to ask if there's any, because they They,
I have sort of inhabited them when I could, but it's way down on Roxbury Point. It's a pain in the neck to get there. And back when
That's where the Mass Historical.
when I was younger, I could go down there and I was actually researching the old court cases because everybody sued the canal for everything you can imagine, and the canal
I bet.
company sued some of them back again.
Well, I just
the
meant
floating
more for
towpath
them
across
to
the
be able to
continent.
help try to protect this for
Well,
long term.
I think
like
I've
the-
got most of what's there, except you never know what's in people's attics and what they're going to be throwing away and going in the dumpster, and it's happened so much. For instance, I was going to show you this, but I'm in the right place. No, not quite the right place.
Like when
Oh,
we
no, I-
got that one map from Southwick, from Lee Hamburg, and it was so big.
Oh, that one, yeah,
The
it's a monster.
UMass library, they digitized it for us. They like stood up really high and took a picture. But it was better than I could have done or any of us could have done because of the camera that they used. And then they put it on the UMass archives.
That's a picture of Mr. Hart, who was my predecessor in the early 30s. In 1955, he gave a talk in Farmington about the canal, which I have because for some reason in 1955, somebody recorded his talk on a wire, pre-tape, and I transcribed that all for Farmington. But the first 2 minutes of his talk are here, and if you click that, you can hear him. But I was going to show you. Oh, come on! Why didn't I get? No, I think it's on the next one here. Oh no, it's not. I'm in the wrong place. Sometimes I don't even know where I am. I'm going to be under. I think history. I want to be under engineering. Just to show you the sort of thing that turns up. No, not history. Why am I having trouble? I'm doing something wrong here. I just. Oh.
You should feel free to move the
No,
laptop to face you to.
I'm one pop-up too far. I gotta go down. All right. Under history. Wyatt Canal is here, I think. Oh no, that's where I was before. So I want to be under engineering. Sorry about that.
I would think the Smithsonian would be interested in this.
Engineering. There it is, way down at the bottom. Boop. And then I think.
Yeah, there was a grant that just was announced. I'm trying to remember. I'll have to look back through, but it had a lot to do with
Why can't I
preserving
find that?
local history, oral histories, things like that. But I'm just curious. I'm going to look that up.
At any
tomorrow
rate,
and
what I'm
see.
looking for is something which donated to a historical society in Farmington in 1941. And they've had it all this time. And nobody knew what it was. And they finally showed it to me. It turns out it's the actual engineer's book for building the canal. It's a little paper notebook. It's got about 80 pages in it. And in it are notes about various things on the canal, which proves it was here. And that engineer lived in Farmington when he built it. This was on the Farmington Canal. And there are pages and pages and pages of handwritten calculations and tabulations for every tenth of a foot for a canal of 20-foot bottom and 45-foot top. For every tenth of a foot that you excavate down, how many cubic yards there are. And the same thing for building things, and the same things for curves, and it pages and pages and pages of hand calculations, which is then take these numbers of cubic yards times 4 cents a cubic yard and go to the contractor and this is how much you bill. So 4 cents a yard times so many cubic yards, and so that that's the sort of thing that
Well, they must have been happy
it's
you
there. They didn't know what it
identified
was, but it finally came. It finally came out. And Ice Pond, where am I here? I gotta go up one more. Major engineering features, which we had a lot of, where we're crossing rivers. This is the Farmington Aqueduct here. This is the original engineering map in Connecticut. There was one like this in Massachusetts, but it was lost in a fire, and so I had to remake it, which wasn't anywhere near as elegant. And this is what the aqueduct would have looked like in contemporary watercolor. This is a modern picture, which is full of errors, but it gets the concept across.
Didn't you do a model of the aqueduct?
Is that it?
Oh, is that
Well, no, that's not it. My model is here.
That's
Is that
like a three-dimensional?
There's my model.
You built that?
Oh, my
It's
gosh.
10 feet long. It's a 1/35th scale exact because I built it from the bill of timbers that they used to build the original aqueduct. So that these are scale 10 by 10s and these are scale 10 by 12s and everything is just the way it ought to be.
Where is your
Some of the
model?
stonework is still there and some of it was wiped out in the 55 flood, but it was measured beforehand. So it's pretty close to being what it looked like. And
Is that still in Simsbury? At the
this is
Simsbury
at the, this is
Library?
at the Free Library, and there the animals point. You can see. Anyway, that's kind of like that. Let's see if I can get out of this thing.
Farmington or Simsbury.
Simsbury.
I gotta go back.
It's what used to be the town library.
Yeah.
It's
They have a
amazing.
new library now, but this is the old town library. It's now a genealogical library.
Yeah.
And they have the model there. It's the only place I could find that would accept a model that big. I mean, 10 feet long, you can't move it, you can't whatever, so not everybody wants it.
I know a lot about that. I ran up and down on those mountains and everywhere, those trails. I ran up and down all over
Okay.
Simsbury.
Yes. There's a lot of canal in Simsbury, we can
Yes.
do that. And if we go up to Westfield, just another, and then I'll get out of here. We gotta go to Westfield. And we're gonna go down to show sites. I turned them on and off. There we go. This is the big Westfield aqueduct. There are two big aqueducts in Westfield, but this is the one over the Great River in the center of town. Like so. If I put this on, yeah. And these are actual pictures that were done at the time. You can only see the north end of it here. And there you can see the north end of it from downstream there. And there's a very nice detail that somebody did back in the 1840s. We don't know who. And here it is when it's out of business and they're taking it apart because the stone and the wood are valuable and they're auctioned off or they're just pilfered and taken to use. So it's gone. There is the site of what it looked like then, and there's the site. This is what it looked like when.
It's in the same
This
place
is
where
now.
the railroad trestles are now,
This is
pretty
then.
much.
Is it possible for the commission to have access funds to purchase a computer for you to, like,
Oh, I don't mind doing it. I
No,
mean,
no,
this is
but
30
you
years
should-
of my life. It's
No,
worth
it's-
$2,000 or $200.
No, but this is so impressive, and you have labored so much to capture so much history.
Well, my
from
idea
New
was to
Haven
get
to
everybody's
Northampton.
everything in one place, so you didn't have to go all these different places to do it. And I spent literally weeks in the New Haven Colony Historical Society because they've got newspapers and years and years and years. And those days, there were 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 newspapers in New Haven in the course of 20 years. And you can go back, great big pages, but you can find the storage, you can find the shipping records, which boat came in, what date, what it had on it, who the master was, where it came from,
So-
and the same thing going out again.
Do you have Easthampton's newspaper from the turn of
I
the
don't
century then?
know,
Because
but
we
there
had
was an
one.
Easthampton newspaper.
There was one.
If there was, I'd love to get my hooks in it. I
Well,
know
the Gazette-
Northampton's got the
the
Courier and
Gazette
and the Gazette.
But not
And I've
just
been-
the Gazette. I thought there was an actual Easthampton newspaper.
From the 1840s or 1830s or
No,
1820s.
later.
See, that's
Yeah,
the
that's
thing. You can get later things.
Gazette is one of the
I can,
oldest
if
ones
I
in
go up
town.
here.
No, I knew that, but I thought that there was an actual Easthampton paper.
So
for
places
a
like
short
Westfield
amount
and
of time.
Northampton and New Haven have loads and loads and loads of history. But here's a little place, East Farms. There was nothing in East Farms now, and 200 years ago there was really nothing in East Farms. So what am I going to do for history? Well, this isn't a contemporary history, but it's a nice thing to have if I can get at it. Westfield East Farms. Come on down here, guy. This is this is a retired school teacher from Springfield. And she's writing this in 1898, so it's not a contemporary newspaper. But when she was a young girl, 9 or 10 years old, she lived in East Farms on the side of the canal. And there was nothing to do and nowhere to go. And when the canal boat started to honk a horn, they all came running. And they would walk beside the little boy who was running the horse, or just leading the horses, and walk beside him as far as the aqueduct over the Manan River in Southampton. And then she'd have to turn around and go home. And the point of her story is, gosh, it was such a thrill to talk to this worldly boy who'd been to New Haven and had been to Northampton, and here she's way out in the sticks. And so she's recording this, if I can scroll down here. Ooh, what's that doing? I want to scroll down. Here, Sarah Thayer, 34 to 1903, but it's in the Springfield Republican, 1895. So there are later newspapers that carry old things like this, is what my point is, but most of the ones I'm interested in are 1818, 1847. And there's all kinds of stuff in here. I mean, we're not even talking about sources of water. Roanoke, we've been to Roanoke up and down. I finally found that second dam. And you know, it's the damnedest thing, because until 1938 you would have been able to find it. But in 1938 the hurricane washed away part of the land which was used to dam the water for the big paper mills down there. And they had to rebuild the dam and put in a second dam and put iron or steel scaffolding in to keep it from happening again. But if you go there today and you look at it, there was no way you could build a dam there, because there was no way to hold the water back, because it was all going over this second waterfall. The second waterfall didn't exist until 1938, and I had to research the paper company to find that out. And then it made perfect sense, because I have the surveyor's direction saying the north end of the dam is sited on the rock with a hole in it right next to Mrs. Sackett's house. You go back to an old 1830-40 map of Southampton, or what am I trying to say? Roanoke.
Russell?
What's the next one? What's the town?
Russell?
Russell. Old map of Russell. And there's Mrs. Sackett's house right on the map.
That's
And
amazing.
then you go back to the early paper company photographs in the 1880s and 1890s, and it shows the factory, and it shows the boarding house, and it shows where Mrs. Sackett's house had to be. And you can back into it that way. And so now I've got exactly where that doggone thing was. And it makes perfect sense. They built this first dam, and they built it in the wrong place, and it didn't serve its function. It had to supply the water between Westfield and Northampton. And it was sited on the Westfield River so high up there was no pondage, and so they could only accept the water that came in during the season. And during the summer, it wasn't adequate. They finished the canal between Westfield and Northampton in 1834, but they didn't open until 1835, because it took a whole year to get the water from there to here in a sufficient depth to work. And part of it was this dam was missited. So when that washed out, they rebuilt it in this second place. They bought the whole valley, and they flooded the valley, and they had plenty of pondage and no problems with water on that stretch after that. Except in Northampton, where they complained. Yeah, they're always complaining in Northampton. I can't even jump.
Still are.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what it's about. I won't keep you any longer. But that's what I'm trying to do, is find somebody in Northampton to have a home for this thing.
Carl,
And
it's
as I say,
amazing.
9 times I've taken it already, and I've got another Granby and Northampton are next on the list. I've got their computers already.
I would suggest the library here, because,
I would think that would be the logical place with the best hours.
because the
and
Historical Society
The only
has-
concern some libraries have
No,
had is that maybe it would walk out the door. not that anybody can run anything on the computer anymore, because modern computers are not gonna run this program, and it's not, even the program, the computer's so old, it's not gonna be worth too much. But somebody might wanna get some money for vaping or something or other, and, head out the door. But they put a magnetic marker like they do in their books, so that it squeaks if it goes out the door.
Well, I wish John was here, given his computer knowledge, but also the Easthampton Library is looking to relocate into a bigger and maybe
space.
more robust space. This is just absolutely amazing.
Let's see, what can we do here? I gotta get out of here.
What's this photograph you have here on your desk?
Oh, that's that is an old etching. Actually, not etching. I think it's a ink. But it's of the Farmington Aqueduct, part of the Farmington Aqueduct. It's the east end. This is Pier 2. Pier 1's over 2, 3, 4, and it's in a state of disrepair. But it was very important for me in making the model because it shows, along with some of the old photographs, but it shows the trunk, and it shows what looks like a bolt with a nut on the top, and this whole thing was put together in compression, and so that put a nut on the top, nut on the bottom, and they just squeeze it all together. This was quick and dirty construction, not because they didn't want to build it good, but because everything out in the weather of wood rots away in 10 years. And this is a big, important structure. It carries almost 400 tons of water across the river, but it has to be replaced every 10 years. And so that it's done sort of quick and dirty. They put the whole thing together wood-wise, not the masonry stayed, but the second time they did it in 1836, they put it all together in like a month and a half or 2 months between February and March, something like that, before the canal opened. And it said right in the contract, you gotta be done, so and so. But they worked long hours, and the wood was delivered to the side of the river, and they put it all together.
What other Massachusetts communities have you already gone to about this?
Oh, Southwick, Westfield, and Southampton all have already.
Are they all keeping it in their libraries?
Do it, I think, and this is my hole in Massachusetts. Sorry?
Have you given any more thought to doing recorded canal talks?
I was
this
planning.
is beyond amazing, but the extra beyond amazing is you translating it all.
Well, you got my YouTube one from.
I think that was Connecticut, though.
Yeah, right. I was thinking of doing one for each town, the 14 towns. When, I don't know, but COVID's not with us too much anymore, so I am free to do that.
I know we had talked a little bit and talked to some of the local cable access channels and.
Yeah, you wanted to do it in a recording studio, which makes me unhappy. I would rather do it in like a talk, a meeting like this.
I think that was more, I think, during
sitting
COVID.
around, able to ask questions.
Yeah,
and
I think we were talking about that with COVID, just because we were trying to. But no, I'm sure the communities would be open to discussing that again. I think we had even talked about like Westfield at the church and Easthampton. I feel like we had even talked about the location.
Definitely talked about it a lot, but then
and I think that COVID just kept going. So I'm not trying to speak on behalf of this community, but I know that the other communities as well would love to revisit that with you, because part of it is you have all the information in your head. And
and I do talks out of this computer, and we just go spot.
No,
the ones I'm thinking about, we'll do every spot in every town.
You should be shared with everyone your knowledge.
What am I trying to do here?
It'd be nice to be able to keep this program.
Sleep, start, shut down.
You got to transfer it to something that's.
It must be.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if Mass Archives, there's some grant available that sends somebody to have the knowledge, because this really should be like in the state archive. We should live with each community, but this is.
I think it should be a national archive, not state.
But maybe there's some group that could help with
know how to do it.
Exporting it so that it's on something that will stand the test of time.
But I'd rather do it with the group around. And we do it in the dark.
Oh, yeah,
Nobody
talks.
sees me at all.
I'm pretty sure
When they want
the
to, and
communities
I answer their
would be
questions.
very willing to work with you however you're
I hate
comfortable.
television, absolutely hate television.
Yep, no, I think that was just because of COVID. That was
But,
just it.
yeah, Carl, this is so wildly exciting. What
Yeah.
you've done is just so remarkable, like incredibly remarkable.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
I know, that's what it's like. You're amazing, yeah.
It's
well,
Patience
It's-
beyond
Mr.
patience.
Hart took all these pictures back in the 1930s. He was an engineer for the New Haven Company, which ran the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad, and he spent most of his career realigning rail lines and electrifying rail lines. But he was also an avid photographer, and he took 22,000 pictures of all kinds of interesting things, from waveforms on the beach to old gravestones, the iron furnaces in Connecticut, the canal, thank God, he took several hundred pictures of the canal, and lots and lots of stuff. But he meticulously cataloged every single picture, whether he developed it or just left it in negative form. So they all have numbers, they all know where they are, and the date, and you can actually follow him by looking at the numbers in the pictures and watching the shadow of the sun move, and you know how he's going through Southwick and how he's going through Westfield. It's absolutely amazing. And I've got them all. And so they're all, not all of them are in here, but the relevant ones are in here. A lot of them are just negatives, but you could convert them and change them. So he was my predecessor. And if it weren't for him, this would be hard. Some of the old pictures of Farmington Aqueduct go back to the 1880s when Carl Clauser took those. He was the music master at Miss Porter's school in Farmington. And he came from St. Petersburg in Russia, and she recruited him, and he came there. He had a whole bunch of daughters. They appear in a lot of these pictures. And he was a very interesting man as well.
Well, you brought it all together.
Yeah.
And then
doesn't even
some.
mention the engineers. Some of the tales the engineers are telling are very simple things like, I've got their old letters. They came from way out on the Erie Canal in their museums. The engineers' letters somehow got out there. And they're in Farmington, they're just living a little life, and my toddler crawled through the top and fell through the bars and fell down the stairs, and all this sort of stuff. But in there also are stories. The funding for the Massachusetts part of the canal was very, very difficult because all the capital then was in the eastern part of the state, as it is now. I mean, there's nothing in the west, it's all down there. And the eastern part of the state was not going to fund this project because this project is supplying the port of New York, not the port of Boston. It's Yankees and Red Sox way back then, but serious.
Yeah.
And so that nobody out here is going to buy the stock except the people who live here, and they don't have any money. And so when they got their contractors, there was one for Hampden County and one for Hampshire County, and they both went broke. But the one for Hampden County was Mr. Sheldon, that the canal boat was named after. He was a brigadier general in the Massachusetts militia, and a big real estate man, and a big canal enthusiast. So he decided he'd take the contract to build all of Hampden County, including the feeder. And he took what money there was, but the rest of it he took in canal stock, thinking once it's done, it'll be worth something. But of course, they couldn't finish because they couldn't pay their contractor. The stock was worthless, and he had to go bankrupt, and he had to, well, here's a big prominent man, lost his fortune and had to flee because of his creditors. He ended up fleeing the country to the Republic of Texas, where he lived in the Republic of Texas as a merchant, supplying blankets and pens and things like that to the Houston government. And he died there of a fever, was shipped back in a cask, salt or alcohol, I don't know what was in there, but he's buried in Pine Hill Cemetery in Westfield today. But that's the sort of thing that happened. The Northampton contractor luckily had a liquor license and sort of recouped his fortune. He lost his fortune, but he made it back again.
Have you talked with any other communities about doing the public talks yet?
I haven't talked to anybody because I've had another complaint. We got rid of COVID, and I've got a problem, which is Yeah, my wife has dementia, and I cannot leave her very long. I'm on a big vacation right now. So, I gotta get her up in the morning and get her washed and dressed and fed. She doesn't know her way around the house anymore and that kind of thing. So my time is kind of limited, and I'm sort of on probation tonight. I'm going to be late getting back for all my talking, but I've enjoyed it.
So
We appreciate
So-
you sharing all this.
So but again, I think it could be arranged. It's just a matter of the timing. Maybe Saturday afternoons would work out or something like that. I'd like to go to the individual towns to do it. Forbes Library is good. I've spoken in the Forbes Library before. The Northampton Historical Society really doesn't have a large enough room. I've spoken there a couple times, but it's very cramped, and Forbes is better.
What town do you live in? What state do you
North
live in?
Granby.
Okay.
Yeah,
Connecticut
yeah, just
or?
next to Southwick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sort of almost in the middle. But yeah, I'd like to do that. And but if you want a sample, she's got the YouTube. I don't have the YouTube thing in my head, but
I just Googled you and I found it.
yeah, but there's a couple of things in there that are, one's a crazy television interview, which is real chunk, and there's another one about, it has Northampton in it. I don't remember who did that one. They must have recorded that at Northampton. But what I want to do is one town at a time so we can get to all the dots. When you're doing 3 or 4 towns at a time, you just have to go over the major engineering features or the important things that remain, and you miss a lot. So if we do every town, we can hit every spot. Except
And you
Westfield.
do
We gotta
Russell
go-
with Westfield.
That's what I was just going to
Yeah.
say. That's going to be a long talk because you got, or we could do Russell.
Oh, yeah,
They did a
I'm
very
sure
nice
they
talk in
would-
Russell last summer.
Okay, then,
Or
yeah.
last spring.
Okay, well, that
I
would
did
be,
Russell, and,
that would be a great thing for
we talked
communities
an
to
hour
follow.
and a half, but they didn't even know the canal was there or what it was for. They
Right.
kept asking, what's this got to do with Russell? I said,
I
"Oh,
know.
water, with the canal.
know.
Right there, it's very important. Anyway,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really, it's just
Okay.
spectacular.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Okay.
Wow.
Try to wrap this up as quick. Cemetery preservation.
Yes.
So,
I love Brookside Cemetery. So I have a couple copies that I just need, but, so, I'm assuming that's what you're talking about,
there is a
Brookside?
recommendation about Easthampton. Let me know. I left my information on the sheet there, so you got all the phone number and email.
perfect.
Yeah.
I think, given our current state with the Historical Society, it's best to try to pursue things with the library.
Yeah, I would think. If somebody
Is
would
that-
talk to the library and get their permission or whatever.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that something that you would take the lead on, or do
But
you
then I
want
would have to
someone-
donate I don't know who I'd donate the computer to, probably the library, I guess. I'd like to stick with historical societies because they're private rather than institutions of the government. But if there's no way around it,
Ours is really not.
yeah, I think we did that in Westfield too, because they don't have a historical
No,
society
yeah,
down there.
don't,
They've just got a commission.
don't
But
do
then-
the East Hampton
Williston.
Historical Society. No, Williston's good, but the
But
library
it
would be so,
it wouldn't be
yeah.
accessed.
Yeah.
to the
I mean,
general
if
public.
there's, Williston
Is
would,
that yours?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I was gonna say,
My mouse pad
Williston,
fell out.
Williston would be able to, they may, both the Williston Library and Williston School might have computers that this could run on.
Yep.
I don't know. I know, personally, I have an old Mac that.
Well, anyway, get in touch with me and let me know what to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
know how to get a hold
will,
of you.
and we are grateful that you
Okay.
came here and shared with us.
Nice to see you,
Thank you so
Carl.
much.
Thank you.
Mike, can you add that to the agenda for next,
What's that?
sure, just so that we continue this discussion and doesn't drop off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Yeah, he called me a while ago, and then
Yeah, I know we've had intermittent conversations.
Well, yeah, when you called me, right?
he called me and then I called you.
And then I
and-
called him back, and then we talked a couple times, actually. And, it's kind of a sticky point, like, well, I don't know where you can, the historical society in town is,
It's non-existent, let's just.
It's not
I
It's not
feel like-
existent.
No, I saw an article about, I think that's so wonderful for each community. I saw an article about Southwick. that was, and I feel like that, maybe that went to the Historical Society, but I thought it was being held at the library, again, for public access, but.
Right.
If you might want to maybe also keep talking about the talks, who would be a point person to organize. If he's
Great.
willing to come and talk to
Yeah.
a talk in each community, that would be amazing.
Yep.
Especially if
Figure that
it
out.
could be recorded on YouTube so that
Right.
it's publicly accessible as well, and that anybody
So-
doing research would,
Frizzle and family.
yeah. Okay,
Okay.
Brookside, okay, let me shorten this, what do you want to know?
Well, I
This
mean,
cemetery was so much, I think all cemeteries are cool, but this cemetery was so much, it's a hidden gem. Because if you looked at anything with this documentation, the landscape designer also designed Mount Auburn.
Oh,
So,
really?
Bowditch. So, I really loved
Talking about
the
Brookside, or-
WPA building. And that was part of kind of the draw for the
Yeah.
Park and Rec Department, that they wanted, well, they really wanted the one at Daly Field documented, and I said, well, there's a similar and even fancier one at Brookside. Brookside's never been documented. So that's how we ended up getting to the point where we were documenting Daly Field, updating documentation on the WPA stone building there, but then also doing Brookside. And Mass Historic responded that it is eligible for the National Register on a local level, and then they wrote (state) national, which I've never seen that happen. But it's because of Bowditch, and because this was designed before Mount Auburn Cemetery. And they gave a lot of suggestions about how his papers are held at, I think they're held in Salem or something like that, more research would need to be done to see, and also because it really appears to be intact landscape-wise with the winding paths and things like that. And that the newer burials are in a separate section, so they don't, it's clearly like not part of the older part of the cemetery. So it has a lot of integrity.
That's nice. Yeah.
Wow.
When this came out, I reached back out to John at Parks and Rec, and I said, let me know if you want to take this any further. This, I think, would be a good candidate wherever it comes from to proceed with the National Register nomination.
Okay. Well, at least what my thoughts were, after seeing this, thinking like, well, this is a good segue into getting some funds to do some rehabilitation work at, between this Main Street and East Street cemeteries, which are even older than this one.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of like tombstones that are, toppled over, and, there's Revolutionary War soldier
Yeah.
burials there.
Right.
And so, kind of like looking for a starting point with those two properties also,
Okay. I haven't.
We already have a lot of good information here, obviously.
Yeah, I haven't looked at those forms too much. So I can take a look this week when I'm back at the office.
Okay.
I know that Sturbridge has recently done a really big stone conservation project, and I don't know if they updated documentation or they just went to like a conservationist and worked on getting an assessment. Amherst also did a plan specific to one of the cemeteries and updating what needed to be done and kind of phased conservation and things like that.
Which cemetery? Was it
West,
West?
maybe?
Let me see a little Wildwood. So-
Yeah, so I apologize, I didn't know you were looking for information on those cemeteries, but I'm happy to find some
Yeah,
kind of,
well, I wasn't very specific because I
That's
wasn't
all right.
really sure what I wanted to do.
no worries.
I mean, I have an idea, but, I'm really glad you brought this.
And this is the form, I'm a little confused because I did an area for Daly Field, and in Macris right now, it says Nonotuck Park, so I have to reach back out to them because it says there's no form. I did a whole form for Daly Field, even like, this is, a memorial from, 2013, everything. This is the, the different structures related to the ball fields, and it's not showing up, but this is the form for the comfort station, which was the reason the park department reached out to begin with, because I think there was interest in trying to get some funding for this, and Mass Historic said that Daly Field's not eligible for the National Register, but that this building might be eligible. It has to, there needs to be a demonstrated context with other WPA buildings, so then I think that the building here at Brookside is clearly of the same period and the same funding source and the same planning and,
Did the Comfort Station not have a plaque on it like the cemetery building does?
the built by Works Progress?
Right.
If it's not in the photograph, then no.
I've seen one. I had never noticed one there, so.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, looking at it, it looks a little different. Very similar.
So one of the things Mass Historic asked for was more photos of the interior of that building, which I did take, but it's mostly gutted. There's not too much in there, but the one at Brookside Cemetery is really intact. It has a fireplace and other really neat details.
Anyways, so,
So what's your recommendation for, it sounds like for Brookside, you recommend pursuing some state or national register?
Yeah, for Brookside, I would recommend pursuing National Register listing, especially because it's so significant, tied to the landscape designer.
Yep.
And I think it's extra special because it has that WPA building and the setting. And also, it's so heavily used by the public. I think when I was in there taking photos, there was something going on, and it was in the fall, and there were like carriage rides. It was kind of, I did a double take because there's like a horse-drawn carriage going by me, and I'm taking pictures, and I was like, what year is it? But I see people like picnicking there all the time, and it's so heavily used by the community, walking into Nonotuck, and I just think it's a really good, like, high-profile place to really honor.
Would there
Obviously,
be money
right.
for stone restoration?
Yeah, let me think about that. Survey and plan, Mass Preservation Projects Fund, I don't know. Well, I think a lot of communities that do the stone restoration, they get money, they go to the CPA. I think probably that's, so I'll do a little bit of research on where people fund these. I feel like Sturbridge probably use CPA funds.
I would guess CPA funds, and we did the MPPF grant a few years ago to expand our inventory.
Yep.
And I just, it was a small amount of money that we got, and it was a large amount of paperwork in order to get it.
That's right, I don't bid on those anymore.
Yeah, so it was like $25,000 grant of 50/50, so we had to match $12,500, and then MHC led the show the entire time because everything we did wasn't good enough. So, we hired a consultant, but then they wanted to see all the documentation around how we hired the consultant and, making sure that they were
Yeah, there's a lot of
correct.
a
lot of it is good because I didn't have the knowledge to like run a historic project. I don't know, like PhD, which is a PhD, which PhD degree, you need to be eligible. So it was good in that regard, but
communities that have CPA funds they have a lot of options, especially, for everything that are the required categories, of which historic preservation is one of them. So.
we don't go asking too much from them at this point yet, so.
there's not much available right now until July 1.
So that might give you time. So I'll look up, I'll try to see what other funds there are. I feel like the Massachusetts Preservation Project Fund is brick and mortar, so I don't know, but I'll check. Perhaps there is something for buildings. But the steps for trying to determine what do you need to know about a cemetery and condition before you go out to bid for someone to come in and do conservation work. So I'll try to find some examples of that. Like, is there a conditions assessment that needs to be done before, and then you get kind of a report and recommendations about what stones should be, done first. Like there's Minxie Fannin, I know they do a lot of this. They just did some work in Warren, and they did like one stone at a time. And they kind of approached it that way, like, this is what we have money for, what stones can you do, or what need to be done. So I'll be happy to look into that and send it
Great.
to you and just get some examples from other communities.
And then similarly, my question about the canal for National Register form, you know, what's that entail for Brookside? I mean, because it's going to be onerous.
For Brookside, not as onerous. It's more that it takes a long time because the state has, Mass Historic is saying it's up to 2 years to get listed on the National Register. I think that's actually an underestimation because I've had forms that have gone in and have taken 18 months just to get back to me, and there's always 1 to 2 to 3 rounds of edits, unless maybe, you know, well, I'll get it right this time. But the process for this, it's much easier for a cemetery than a building, I will say. Much easier for a cemetery than a building. And it's easier to document, and it would just be more involved going back, taking photos. They mapped it out. This is a pretty long response for an eligibility determination, and they really said, we feel that it's eligible under criterion A for community planning, development, and social history, criterion C, landscape architecture as an early design by prominent landscape architect and engineer Ernest W. Bowditch, who designed other garden cemeteries such as Walnut Hill Cemetery in Brookline, as well as numerous parks and estates. And then D, because it's a cemetery. And what they said about the landscape aspect piece, the cemetery may be of state or national significance due to its design by Bowditch, representing the work of a master. Because Brookside Cemetery was early in Bowditch's career, it should be placed in context with his other works. His involvement with Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge in the years immediately preceding this commission must be considered. The Essex Institute in Salem has a collection of Bowditch's papers. These and secondary literature must be consulted in researching. So the onerous part would be that they know that there's more it's not just going through Genealogy Bank or going to the local archives. They know that there's more information out there that would be the piece, that they want to see it.
And so they would, I assume, it sounds like this would be something we would need to hire a consultant to do.
Yep.
We don't have the resources in-house to do it, and it sounds like it might be a bigger project than you could do at PVPC. Or is that something that you would be willing to?
Yeah, no, it's something that, so you can direct contract with PVPC because we're your regional planning agency. This is definitely something I would be happy to take on because I know a lot about this cemetery already, and I think it's fascinating. Or it could go out, it could be somebody who both has well, actually, I should say that if I did do this, I would consider subcontracting the landscape description piece to somebody who really, because they said in here, a beefed up landscape description, not just, it slightly slopes downhill and like things that I could say. It would need somebody to step in for that piece to describe it properly, because they're saying part of why it's significant is they don't think it's changed that much. The new part is kept new, but the old part seems to be, sloping, and the trees are even there. And
the nice thing about cemeteries is that no one really wants to develop there. Especially
if they watch Poltergeist.
They're kind of safe from development, and once people are in the ground, you don't really start disturbing the landform to make a new pathway.
Homestead, which is so
right.
exciting.
So I think that's why this was a really fast turnaround for this, and I think it's because they got. It's really interesting.
Pretty significant.
So, I mean, it seems to me that we would want to look into pursuing PVPCU to continue with this one. Just because you have familiarity with it.
I would love that. So I could try to come up with, and if you're saying probably July is when you submit for funding?
July, right now the CPA they spent all of their historic money.
So waiting for the next
And they spent all their undesignated money.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Communities don't even have anybody applying.
And they spent all their open space funds and all their housing funds.
So there's stuff happening. Okay.
So there's nothing left this year. But they're doing a quarterly funding cycle. So April, May, June, then the appropriation would be actually funded in July. So or we could come in July and be funded in
Okay, so if you're,
September.
I can try to put together a proposal for what, and the way that I'm doing these now, because of this massive gap of time with, it gets in a queue at Mass Historic, and then you have to wait for it to be reviewed, and they have multiple people who edit it, and then you get all those edits, and then you have to,
Right.
I'm doing contracts for these by like phase one. Like phase one, we submit, contract's done, and then we wait 12 months because there's no reason to have a contract or money sitting there for that long. So I'm just doing a budget for the first phase.
Rough order of magnitude for cost?
For cost, okay, so phase one for a cemetery, I just gave a cost estimate, I said $3,500.
Okay.
Now, this cemetery, I would say more than that, because I know that they expect someone to drive to Salem and like go, and that also, that we might wanna add a little more money to get somebody like I'm just throwing out a name, like a Martha Lyon, like somebody who really knows, can understand and describe the landscape, because that's so significant here. So I would say like $5,000 to $8,000 probably for first phase.
And then like a phase two would be something less because we're probably just making some
Yes,
edits.
so the goal is that like it's so good the first time that it's just
Right.
like you know, 2 spaces after that sentence and you need to make it 1, but I'm sure they're gonna tear it apart because they always do.
Because I mean,
But yeah, that's the goal, that the second edit would be less, you don't need to go out and take new pictures, you don't need to do all that stuff.
Okay. I mean, I think that's.
So
very
overall, I
good.
would guesstimate, being realistic, up no more than 10,000, but over a couple of years.
Yeah, and so I mean, we don't, our CPA committee doesn't mind funding a project that takes 3 to 5 years to go through. So the recommendation would be, let's ask for more money than we need. Let's ask for $15,000 so it leaves some room for, inflation of costs and things like that.
Yeah, like contingency.
And then we'll contract with you or we'll contract PVPC for phase one, and then we'll have a separate contract for phase two, but the funding will already have
You've
been
already
approved.
set it aside.
So we only have to go to CPA once.
Yep.
We don't have to come back and say, thanks for funding phase one, now
Yeah.
please fund phase two.
And then there's really nothing tangible that you can show.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
for like,
That makes
Yeah.
sense. I think up to 15 is a reasonable, but this, whether it's me or someone else, like this made me excited, because it's
Yeah.
a special, you could just tell that it's a special place.
and then similarly for the canal, we'd be looking at not PVPC,
Right.
but that might be something that PVPC is a project manager for.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
lucky to get actual historic preservation DLTA funds this year set aside, so I'm very hopeful that this can keep up, because each community knows how long you've all been working on this on your own, or trying to review projects that you're like, the canal's there, we think, but we don't know, and we don't have anything that says that it was there. So that is why it's good it's finally in Macros, because it shows up as something that like should be considered with
Yeah.
planning. Not that you should stop development, but like, let's just think about, ways to not destroy it, or ways to,
Like with Ryan's
Yeah.
situation.
yeah, just so, that's what you're doing, what you're charged to do. Yeah, I would be like the facilitator, like it would the best case scenario is it gets a positive determination of eligibility. I don't know if Mass Historic, which is really why they didn't want to do this, would come out and talk to each community, like all the property owners would be invited. They're really gonna hate this. They would all be invited, and then there's like in each community, like here's our public forum, but they said that, like, have you talked to, do you even know if the residents or community want this? And I said, we sent postcards like 9 months ago to every single property owner. So the conversation has started. It's not gonna be like a surprise, it's been in the news. Of course, there's gonna be people who don't want it, or maybe don't really understand what it means, but the public conversation has started in every single community. It's already been, out there on the table. So I would be facilitating if needed. We would help with getting out RFPs, to get a consultant to keep going. We just have to, figure out with each community the money and all of that stuff. So that's why I'm hoping they'll get a determination soon, just so the communities that are really interested can proceed, and the ones that maybe need a little more talking to, we figure out where they're at.
Great.
Did that answer your question?
Completely.
I got off on a roll.
No,
sorry.
no,
I
that's
like
okay.
email them every 3 weeks. I'm like, can you please just,
I love getting your updates.
oh, good.
I may not always respond, but.
That's okay. No, I know you're out there.
Yeah, so if you don't mind sending us like just a quick proposal
Yeah.
for Brookside.
And I will find some examples for like, how did communities phase? We want to fix, we know there's headstones that need to be fixed in different cemeteries.
Yeah.
Where do we start? So just get examples of, I'm pretty sure it starts with some type of assessment, which also always costs money. But now Westfield has been, not Westfield necessarily, but it's Cindy Gaylord from Westfield and Jean Thoreau, does that name ring a bell? So this has to do with stone cleaning, and I know this is a sensitive topic because we don't want to damage stones, but they have had an interesting thing where they're training volunteers to properly clean stones using D2 supervised. And I think they've had a couple of like public volunteer sessions, so I can reach, like,
So
just look into that, because I know people want to do it, but then I know I've been like, wait, like, don't touch, do no harm, like,
Yeah.
it's better to leave it alone than, accident. But it's interesting because they're trying to teach people the right way to do it, but it's also kind of an engagement outreach thing, and can be tied in maybe with some history about the cemetery. So just something to consider going forward. If there's stones that simply need a little bit of a light, safe cleaning, but then people feel like they're part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandparents' stone has lichen on it.
That's deteriorating the stone.
Yeah, so it's always like a soft bristle brush, water, low. But I think, most anybody who does preservation, if they saw someone in there with cleaning, like a panic sets in. But yeah, there are some communities that are trying to, get people involved in that.
Would a National Register nomination or approval on this affect how Parks and Rec does their maintenance and how the operations of the cemetery?
I don't think so, because almost every cemetery, every community has at least one cemetery that maybe is on the National Register, and it's just like Main Street, like people can do, right? If it's not a local historic district, there's no,
Okay.
yeah. No,
No what? No oversight?
there's no restrictions.
We'll never get
Okay.
federal funds to build a highway through our cemetery.
Yes, that's the only thing.
Once it's National Register.
You might, there'll just be a lot of paperwork.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because even with, I got the MIPA review for the Tasty Top project, and it's not stopping things, but it's just like, well, maybe instead of this, could we do this? It's just meant to slow things down if something's on the National Register or eligible for this actually, as being eligible for the National Register, if Mass Historic was asked to comment, they'd say, well, it is eligible for the National Register. Could you maybe put the highway to the left of the cemetery instead of through the middle of the cemetery?
Right.
So it's just meant to kind of bring out the best case scenario, is the theory. More paperwork.
Yeah.
More paperwork, yeah. But yeah, it shouldn't hurt anything with the Parks Department. And it could, potentially, I know that, I feel like that MPPVAF grant does give money for cemeteries. So you talked about the survey and planning grant.
Yeah, I misspoke.
Yep. And MPPF is, I don't know that it does for cemeteries, but it is the same thing where it's a matching, the state's heavily involved, and there's a preservation restriction. So, yeah. Okay. Do
All right.
you have any other questions? Sorry.
No, don't be sorry, you're just amazing. Really, really fantastic.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. So I will get that to you as soon as possible. And if you have any follow-up questions, just email me and let me know.
Okay.
And I'll be happy
We
to.
know where to find you.
I'll be happy to do, I love to send emails with attachments and links and all that stuff.
Thank you so
Thanks for
much.
bringing it up.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Fantastic.
I hope you're not here too much longer.
So much.
Have a great night.
Thank you too.
Take care. Okay. Well, it's getting late, so we're just going to skip over metal detecting and historic site. Now, I have one thing I actually missed on the correspondence. I just had a letter letter of support for City Space. It's basically the same thing with a few changes. If anybody wants to take a look at it, it will get sent tomorrow.
Is this the one that you attached?
Huh?
Is this the one you attached in your
Yes, I did. The February minutes, I noticed that, I went to change it.
Yeah, no, I did.
And I sent the
Saw it.
blank email, and then it didn't show the subject line when I went to send it again.
No, I read it. It looks good, thank you for writing
And,
it.
and
My name is spelled wrong on it, but that's not a
Is it?
huge deal.
Somehow I
How was your name
downloaded.
spelled? What do you mean it's spelled wrong?
The last name, it's,
Oh, because of the
It's
capital J?
no, the capital's right. It's
Capital's right.
DEJASU. But you have it right in everything else, so.
Where was it spelled wrong?
Here.
Oh.
Up in the commission members.
Did you do that?
No, you did that.
I don't remember doing that.
I think John did it. He's not here. Let's blame him.
Yeah, John did.
And honestly, I don't care. I just like, if it matters down the line, I'm just telling you.
Let's see.
I don't.
It's a-
Oh, yeah, I see. Oh, you know what? It was probably autocorrect on there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just blame autocorrect.
If we can't blame John,
Yeah,
we'll
you know,
just do
because I've
that.
spelled her name
I know,
so
that's
many
why,
times. That's why I
exactly,
was like,
so, yeah.
And I know it always flags it, so.
Yeah. It's the,
That flag everywhere,
it's the
yeah.
AI. They're like,
All right, so everybody's good with that? I can-
Yeah, no, thank you for doing that. Thank
You know,
you.
it's funny, I had to download all of these articles for the Pascoma Conservation Trust newsletter that I'm doing right now. And I'm looking at all of the ones I downloaded, and somehow this one came up with the ones I downloaded for Pascoma. And I'm talking to Rachel Talushkin, and I'm saying, is this supposed to go? It's like,
Well, what is this?
why is this in the newsletter?
All right, next meeting would be May.
it's already gonna be May.
How is this?
I know, right?
I think it's May 8th.
Yeah, well, let's see, where's the calendar?
May 8th at 6:30.
Oh, yeah, that's right, it was early. May 8th.
If it's still second Wednesday yet.
Did you get
Yes.
Yeah, I have the 3 copies. I have the daily,
Be in Georgia.
Brookside.
Oh,
and-
that's so exciting. I'm glad you're gonna do that.
So she gave out 3 or 4 copies of each. So if you,
That's a lot.
I'm gonna just make sure that
I
they
just
end up
want to
in.
read the history on this one.
You should
Since
take it.
We've got 2 stones there.
You got copies of,
Yeah.
you want a copy of this one, or do you have one?
No, I'm good.
You good? Okay.
We can send it. Send it.
Scan it and
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, it's available online too.
Oh, it is, okay.
These are all now on Macros. But there's not, you can't use the map version of Macros. You have to just go in and do the, like the table search. And it's like, she was saying the inventory numbers are, what's that?
It's like I know how to do all this stuff.
Actually, no, so the 6, the Daily Field and Brookside should both be
Manhattan.
in there because they're pre-existing.
New York Hospital.
These are pre-existing inventories with updated information on them. Whereas the Hampshire Hamden Canal is a new inventory area. So it's not marked yet, but the inventory is available. You just have to scroll down to the correct line in the database. So,
Student teaching them how to
okay. So, Mike, does this work to continue the conversation with Carl Walters on the next agenda?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And then,
As long as it's, with him, or,
I mean, he probably won't be
yeah,
here, but
right. But, yeah, no, we can try to, I want to keep him in the loop anyways,
Yeah.
as far
Yeah.
as,
So amazing.
I mean,
I really think he's Smithsonian.
yeah.
well, I was talking to him about the pro, he says, well, we can only run on this, and there's got to be some way to convert it.
I'm sure
That's
that
what
there
someone
is.
like the
But
Smithsonian
he's like,
would
no,
have.
so.
I mean, I know they make like video game emulators. You can play Nintendo games on your PC. Like someone's
Yeah.
someone's able
can do
to
it.
someone's
Yeah,
able to do
that's-
this.
I-
Like
Talk to the right people.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
the
sure
right-
that's. And,
But it's
but
it's technically his property, so
it's-
it's like,
yeah, exactly, which is why it's like,
which
yeah,
is why he doesn't
be
want to
so
give. Which is why he
careful
doesn't
with
want
it.
to give it to government because then it becomes public record, public information. But it's also on a computer that you can't.
Yeah, I mean,
So
however
maybe
we,
that's his thing, I don't know.
but he's clearly, yeah, he's wanting to protect it, but he's also wanting to share it. He wants it to be
he also
shared,
wants to be
which
able
is
to update it.
He
And
loves to
so,
talk
and it's
about it.
Yes.
beautiful. It's
Yeah,
just fantastic.
I didn't notice that because,
Yeah.
That was good, though.
Oh, he was
Oh,
amazing.
When he
was
called me,
amazing.
when he called me, I
informative.
can't tell you how long we were on the phone.
That was really impressive.
Yeah.
He's impressive.
Okay.
All right.
It's interesting to have a face with the voice, too.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the
I
meeting.
second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 8:20.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.